No, I'm not going to talk about COVID today. And it's not really a cheerful subject for the week between Christmas and New Year's, but, science being what it is, University of Colorado wanted to look and say, are we at a greater risk of getting cancer the older we get? Well, you think wear and tear, almost natural? Do most cancers occur in the elderly? We'll get started in 1 minute. The information you hear on the Nutrition Shop Health Talk with Dr. Len is strictly educational and is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease. Any healthcare decision should be discussed with your health professional. And now, here is Dr. Len. It's amazing when I've said over and over again, from the time we're born to the time we die, we make about 100 billion cancer cells at any one time. Really? Then why don't most of us get cancer? Well, we'll discuss that and look at this new piece of information because they wanted to find out what is the starting point of cancer. We know things like smoking, bad lifestyle, etc. are all risk factors. But what is that genesis point? We'll get into that in a minute. 678-228-8900, 678-228-8900 to reach the office or me, setting up your own consult time or discussing something you may hear today. It's worth noting, in light of recent published research, that a majority of people will not be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime. Hallelujah! According to the National Cancer Institute, about 40% of us will. But again, half glass full, 60% of us won't. But you think about that. We have the highest rates of cancer anywhere in the world, here in the United States. Isn't that amazing? Compared to countries that don't even have a healthcare system, compared to Russia or China, and look at the pollution in China. Although I don't know that we can believe anything that we hear out of there. 40% of all Americans will get cancer in their lifetime. These percentages are worth remembering because research conducted by the University of Colorado found that most cancer-free individuals over the age of 60, I put my hand up now, carry at least 100 billion cells harboring at least one oncogenic or tumor-causing mutation. All of us? The research published in the Journal of Aging and Cancer involved a meta-analysis of previously published sequencing data on normal tissue. So in other words, if you want to know what causes cancer, you got to look at normal tissue and find out what happens when it changes. Dr. D. Gregori did this. He wanted to categorize what are called somatic mutations, or mutations that occur after egg fertilization, after we're born. You realize these mutations change from the time of conception? This is based on the presence of cancer and to showcase the quality of cells with cancer-associated mutations. When you have trillions of cells and they're being maintained for up to a century, they're going to accumulate mutations, Dr. D. Gregori explains. The fact that we get mutations isn't surprising, just based on the known mutation rates. One thing this research points to is that we need to start looking at these mutations and how or whether they cause cancer from a different light. To understand the genesis of cancer, we need to look at normal tissue. And I want you to just remember that line. Because oftentimes we wait until the cancer's here, right? Oh, you go to the doctors once a year, every 2 years, every 5 years. You know, I don't need to get a colonoscopy. I don't need to do this. We'll wait until I start having problems. By the time it's developed into cancer, all these mutations are there and don't always know which ones are contributing to the actual genesis of cancer. So, 1 mutation, 2 mutations, 4, 8, etc. Which one, or all the above, are actually going toward the full beginning points of cancer? I know this sounds confusing. Just hang in there. We had the idea that a lot of mutations in people would be oncogenic or associated with cancer, but we just didn't know how many. We figured that it would increase as people get older, but we didn't necessarily know which genes would be prevalent, and we didn't know the magnitude of how many cells could actually have these oncogenic mutations. After reviewing existing literature, Dr. Evans conducted data sets from researchers who previously had conducted research on mutations of normal tissues. He taught himself to code in the programming language Python. That's a cool. So that he could pull appropriate data. We have about 3 trillion nucleated cells in our body. 3 trillion. That means with a nucleus where our DNA is stored. 100 billion cells with oncogenic mutations isn't a majority of our total number of cells. 3 trillion, 100 billion. So that's less than 3%, I think. If there are billions of cells with these mutations but no indication of cancer, what does that mean? What does it mean to have these mutations in the body anyway? One of the interesting facets of the research findings, DeGregori said, has been learning that oncogenic mutations can be extremely prevalent in certain types of tissue, including skin, colon, and your esophagus. Skin, colon, esophagus. Primary site for these mutagenic changes. Some tissues can be absolutely dominated by these mutations, Dr. DeGregori says, but if you look at the esophagus, for example, half of it's loaded with other kind of mutations which rarely contribute to cancer in non-smokers. So to test this mutation isn't really useful if most of us have it, and it rarely leads to cancer. If we're simply looking for oncogenic mutations, we're always going to find them. And they may not tell us much about the cancer risk. How those oncogenic mutations are interfacing with the tissue will tell us much more about the risk. A further avenue of research, DeGregori says, will be studying why some tissues have such a high occurrence of oncogenic mutations, but a comparatively low occurrence of cancer, like your esophagus. While other types of tissue have a relatively low level of oncogenic mutations. Before we began this research, I had no idea that almost 90% of colon cells become occupied with cancer-causing mutations. You want a reason to be taking a probiotic on a regular and doing your best to avoid laxative use? 90% of your colon cells have cancer-causing mutations. That's the number that was so high it was quite surprising. You said, but relatively low percent of it will get colon cancer. So it's going to be important to study this difference between tissue types. Why is it epithelial cells in the skin, for example, become dominated with oncogenic variants? Why is skin cancer such a problem? But lung tissue actually keeps a fairly low level, unless you start doing things like smoking. Evans says future research could continue studying which oncogenic mutations are most likely to contribute to cancer, help to hone genetic screening tools to test for the most cancer-causing mutations. The vast majority of mutations don't do anything. They don't cause problems, and many aren't even coding sequences, DeGregori says. Every cell in our body has dozens and dozens of mutations, if not hundreds of thousands. So we have an opportunity to begin asking whether these patterns of mutations can dictate whether somebody is at high risk of cancer. What's your takeaway message? You have billions of cancer cells in your body. You need an active immune system. And what do? Buffered vitamin C, folks. There's a reason and a rationale between me telling you this every day. Hey everybody, I want to talk to you for just a minute about our most popular product called Buffered Vitamin C. It has a myriad of biological functions. Vitamin C helps toward collagen formation for many body tissues, including skin, gums, teeth, cartilage around joints. It enhances the absorption of iron in the body, and so involved in energy metabolism, and contributes to reduction of tiredness and fatigue. Vitamin C is the required coenzyme for two groups of enzymes that catalyze the cross-linking of collagen fibers. Vitamin C is essential for normal wound healing, capillary health. Also participates in the biosynthesis of carnitine, serotonin, that key neurotransmitter, and certain other neurotransmitters, including norepinephrine. Vitamin C, our buffered forms, water-soluble, chain-breaking antioxidant that reacts directly with superoxide, hydroxy radicals, and singlet oxygen. Vitamin C interacts with glutathione and alpha-lipoic acid and regenerates vitamin E. Now, our prep also has bioflavonoids in there called flavonoids, a class of phytochemicals that are potent antioxidants as well, which scavenge many potentially damaging free radicals. This well-designed product can allow a large dose of ingredients to be taken in a single serving. The organic food acid combines with the carbonate source to form potassium, sodium, calcium, and magnesium salts of the acid and buffers the solution to a normal pH, so it's easy on the stomach. Clinical studies performed on a variety of these types of products demonstrate that the ingredients, listen to this, penetrate the bloodstream within as little as 15 minutes. Buffered forms of vitamin C. I've said it over and over again. If I was stranded on a desert island and I couldn't take anything else with me, I'd have my buffered forms of vitamin C. You can find that on our website at thenutritionshop.net or call our office at 678-228-8900. That's 678-228-8900. Take care. And again, we're talking about something as simple as buffered vitamin C and our Ultra Probiotic. Taking them both on a regular basis. If you're over the age of 40, that's the least you can do. Does cancer scare you? Does it? Maybe it's time we sit down and really discuss this in depth. All right. Again, the number to reach us off air is 678-228-8900, 678-228-8900. God bless you, folks. See you back here tomorrow. Take care.